You know, Shahin, first you're late, and then you schedule your prostitution whatevers. Right? Did he order a pizza? What the fuck are we doing? Where's my pizza?
I feel like we're not a priority right now to Shahin.
Yeah.
What was that, Shahin?
Dudes, Amazon delivers on Sundays. That's awesome.
What'd you get?
I'm not gonna tell you. It's too private.
It's too private.
Or sex toys and or creams.
Yeah.
Fleshlight. You got a fleshlight from Amazon.
Fuck fleshlights.
Now from Prime Now.
They're so much better.
We're going to start this off salty, aren't we? Let's start the podcast off salty, everyone. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of Vagenda Manocide, where we create vagendas to kill men.
Shahin isn't laughing.
I don't know the history of that.
The herstory, Shahin. The herstory.
Thank you very much, male privilege. This is actually episode 8 of May We Geek Again. Vagenda of Manocide is a topical thing that's going on right now. It hit huge on social media. Shahin, you should Google it. It's hilarious. And it's indicative of what the fuck is going on in the political landscape in the U.S. right now. Which is just this utter weird sort of LSD dream of like crazy horrific shit. I don't even know what's going on in this country right now, but it's great. If you don't live in the United States, I'm sure you've got some crazy shit going on in your country, but it is absolutely hee-haw funny here in the U.S. if you're paying attention to any of this political bullshit. I am Jen. I am joined today by my co-host, Shahin and Joe. Hey, guys, with energy.
Hi.
Hey, guys.
Oh. Joe, you're like, hi. We have spent 44 minutes speaking to one another, Joe, prior to this moment in time.
Yeah.
And you've been engaging and I would say like a bit effusive at times. But then we start the podcast. I'm like, I'm joined by my co-hosts, Shahin and Joe. Shahin's like, hey, and you're like, hello.
Well, okay, so like Shahin
that,
having like super high energy, he's usually the mellow one. So like, I have to take that. Plus, I can't seem too eager. I've got to keep some like mystery about me.
You are intentionally lowering your voice right now to be sexier, and I hate you. Patty in Brazil loves it.
Special shout out to Patty in Brazil.
And you're gonna be like so all over yourself once Patty's like, Joe's voice was sexy as usual, and I'm just gonna be like, fucking Joe, god damn it. So
I know,
listeners,
right?
You are in for a horrific podcast today.
Oh, it's gonna be awful.
And it's gonna be horrible, and that's all about setting low, like under-promising and over-delivering. So this is like, we're going to under-promise and over-deliver today. So if it's even like slightly passable, like it's still horrific, but slightly passable, we've met our goals. So stretch goals. Stretch goals is you puke like 30 minutes in. Hitting our actual goal is like, you're probably turning the podcast off now and going to puke. Stretch goals are like 30 minutes in, you're like, fuck this shit, go puke. Okay.
Why are we throwing up? What are we?
Because I couldn't come up with anything else. So everybody, let me go to the run sheet. Let me do our pimpins. So you can find May We Geek Again on social media. We're at the Twitter handle of @MayWeGeekAgain on Twitter, because I just said Twitter already. We're also on Facebook at /May We Geek Again. So give us a follow, tweet at us, ask us questions, abuse us, whatever. You can find me personally, Jen, at my Twitter handle, CoolHandLuquette, and at my blog, ClareShenanigans.com, where I do reviews of The 100 and sometimes talk about other TV shows. And believe it or not, Shahin wants to pimp something. So go ahead, Shahin.
So I don't have Twitter, but if you're interested in my thoughts on politics and some other issues, you can go to my blog. It's called freefloatingperspective.wordpress.com, or you can find me on Facebook using my name.
No real names, Shahin. I do not.
I will decide if I will friend them or not.
Okay, I'm just warning you that I stripped everything out of my Twitter and my reviews after Jason Rothenberg happened to tweet out one of a couple of my reviews, calling them pretty good. That's just me. I'm just bragging on myself, just humble brag right now, or just straight up brag. But I was really cautious about anything that would ever impact me professionally. All right, Shahin. So I'm just letting you know you might want to strip anything personal out of your blog. Too late. Dox them, everybody. So we are talking about the end of season 2 today. We are talking about episodes 13 through 16. There's some pretty fantastic episodes, and let me run through the episode details really quickly for you guys. So episode 13 is Resurrection, written by Bruce Miller. Bodyguard of Lies, written by Kim Shumway. And then you have Blood Must Have Blood Part 1, written by Aaron Ginsberg and Wade McIntyre. And of course, Blood Must Have Blood Part 2, written by series creator Jason Rothenberg. So guys, a lot of shit happened in these episodes. And I think we're really excited to talk about the end of season 2 because it's pretty fan-fucking-tastic. Joe, if we're talking about like meeting your expectations as to how the season ran up until these 4 episodes, did season 2 cap off what you thought was going to happen?
Like originally or on the rewatch?
Why do we have to get now? Now you're asking me to make a judgment call, and I don't pick one, Joe. Fuck it.
So I would say like the very first time watching it, you expect the writers to give the characters a way out. You know, in that maybe Clarke won't have to kill everyone. But it is a season finale on the 100, so Clarke is gonna kill everyone. So yeah, like I think, and then, you know, on sort of the rewatch, I was able to pay more attention to certain characters and certain like just much smaller moments. I think that you kind of miss on the first watch because like everything is so like intense and moving forward and you want to know what's going to happen. But at this point you already know what is going to happen. So you get to kind of focus a little bit more on the little details that kind of you really appreciate about the show.
Yeah.
One appreciates about the show. I can't speak for your appreciation.
Well, thanks. I appreciate your appreciation of my appreciation. I don't know where I'm
much
going
appreciated. Yeah. What about you, Shahin? What do you think?
I actually am having a hard time remembering what I was expecting. Maybe because I wasn't expecting anything. Like in terms of how it's going to turn out, I was just kind of going along with it and just seeing how it unfolds. And I remember being blown away though. Like I was pretty happy with how they did it. And it was because it's really hard to do this. I mean, and this is, I think, a dilemma that they have in terms of repeating this kind of awesome ending is really hard. It's like, this was the one variation that worked. Because, like you said, there's either some kind of last-minute save, Deus Ex Machina kind of thing happening, or it's just a terrible outcome which no one likes to watch. But this, I think, because of the brilliant build-up to it, and because of the tone of the show, and also because of the specifics of how it turned out, it just worked out really great for as a conclusion that was not a happy one, and not a it didn't look like there was some miracle happened, but it was also very artistically pleasant or aesthetically pleasant. So I think that's a tough combination, and they pulled it off. So I was really happy.
Yeah, I can't like Shahin. I can't remember what my first impression was on my binge watch. I think it was probably somewhere along the line of I kind of expected that something horrible would happen because that's the precedent that the show sets up for itself. But the events leading up to Clarke's final decision to irradiate level 5, I didn't foresee Donde happening. I didn't foresee the whole Lexa and Clarke dynamic playing out the way that it did in Bodyguard of Lies. And then I did not see the betrayal happening at all.
Neither did I. I don't think so.
No, the betrayal was definitely like a surprise.
I don't think anyone saw that happening.
This was basically like Clarke's like worst set of days on Earth ever. Like nothing goes her way. Even when everything seems to start to go her way, they finally got the door open. It looks like they'll be able to rescue the Grounders and the Sky Crew in Mount Weather. Shit just goes downhill and rains shit on Clarke like you would not believe. And everyone's just like, well, I guess we'll come back tomorrow and knock on the front door and see if Mount Weather will talk to us. I mean, it's like the worst couple of days in Clarke's life, up until that point. So let's start to talk about some key or major themes touched on in these episodes. Let's start with, I don't know who we want to start with. We could start with me. Should we start with me?
Go for it.
I'm going to start with me. So guys, I was watching TV this week and I heard a quote on TV. I'm not going to identify the show or the character because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone. And I apologize if this does spoil something for somebody. But I was watching TV and a character on a TV show murders another character. And after that character is murdered and the aftermath of that and then dealing with it, this character says, I always knew there was part of me that wanted to do this to her for what she did, but I figured that when the time came, something would stop me. And the part of that quote that really rang out to me and kind of connects it to the 100 is that I figured that when the time came, something would stop me. And that, of course, is in relation to Clarke. So the show that this comes from, it's unclear if the events leading up to the murder were set in motion by the character who commit the murder. And the murder itself was so almost effortless and benign that it had almost the act itself wasn't really violent, but the after effects of, as the viewer, you watching it and going, oh shit, this actually happened. And then the thought was, oh, I thought I wanted revenge, but I thought something would stop me. And throughout season 2, I'm like, there's something that is going to stop Clarke from going to that final place that she can't come back from, which is the irradiation of level 5 and killing 382 people, I think was the total. I think a lot of people died prior to that, to Bellamy and to Raven and Wick. So, we're being pedantic about, or I'm being pedantic about the deets right now, but it's like, what would have stopped Clarke? And I think it's hard. I also, when hearing that quote and thinking about how Clarke develops in the last half of season 2, I often wonder if meeting Lexa and getting some of Lexa's leadership philosophy wasn't one of the worst things that ever happened to Clarke, because Clarke seems to be able to do whatever it takes at the end of season 2 with Donde, with killing Dante, with irradiating level 5. Joe, what are your thoughts?
I mean, like, I think it shows like growth towards that, and I'm sure that like I think Lexa gave her sort of permission that she had been seeking, but knowing that these were like the moves that she had to make, because it's not like killing people is like new to Clarke at this point. Like, she straight up, killed the Grounder army. Like, she's a button pusher and a throat slitter and
a lever puller. But Joe, on like my second part of that thought was, what if Bellamy had never gone into Mount Weather? What if Bellamy had been the angel sitting on Clarke's shoulder? Because, like, Bellamy has made a lot of very bad decisions and he's cost people their lives. The culling from season 1 being, the thing that stands out most up until this point. It feels like Bellamy could have talked her down from some of these decisions that were made. And then that without his weird sort of moral center that seems to exist around her, they like balance each other out. Like, on their own, Clarke and Bellamy are very, very dangerous people. She makes decisions at the macro level that affects a shit ton of people and kills a shit ton of people. He makes decisions at the micro level that, again, kills a shit ton of people and affects a shit ton of people, but he makes decisions based on himself and the welfare of his sister. So it seems like they like throw out romantic whatever, throw out all of that kind of discussion around their dynamic. Their dynamic is as people who need one another and who balance each other out. Like, their absence from one another really hurts. To me, I think it hurts their decision making. It skews them too far in one direction from one another. And that's what I really love about Bellamy and Clarke together, is that, like, as friends, they kind of understand each other. But once they're apart, and you see this a lot in season 3, like, shit gets so fucked up because they don't have that person who can talk them down from these bad decisions. And that's why when I heard that quote, I figured at the time, when the time came, something would stop me. I'm also like, well, I figured at the time came, someone would stop me. And that never happens for Clarke. Even at the end, when she's like, give me a better plan, guys. Give me a better plan. Give me a better plan, Bellamy. He can't. He doesn't have the time to come up with anything. So Clarke is pushed to that nth degree, that action she can't come back from.
Right, but I don't think that that's necessarily fair to her character if you're saying, I thought someone or something would stop me. No one else is offering a better plan. She has a plan that will work. And so
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. But at that point, she's gone so far. Like, her game of chicken with Mount Weather, Dante, and Cage has gone so far that she can't come back from that. But the events prior to that, if Bellamy had never gone into Mount Weather and he was kind of the counterpoint to some of Lexa's leadership philosophy and some of the decisions that Lexa pushed on Clarke, love is weakness. We have to evacuate Donde now, just you and me. We can't warn anybody. Like, I feel like Clarke may have had more options up until that point.
I don't know, though. Having seen how Bellamy sort of became very black and white in season 3, granted in Clarke's absence, but the fact that it was sort of drilled pretty hard home that he kind of will only stop and think about things if it involves Octavia.
Yeah.
I feel like he would have still, I don't know, like, I kind of would see Bellamy almost on Lexa's side in this, as long as it was Mount Weather is the enemy. Like, Bellamy is a fire hose, and if you point that, then, like, he will go full force through anything that's not his sister. And so, if I feel like Bellamy has bloodlust. I don't think Clarke has bloodlust, but I think Clarke has the strength to make decisions that are awful and terrible. But I think in some, like, Bellamy has the stomach for destruction.
I disagree with you. I don't think Bellamy has bloodlust whatsoever. I think he acts from a place of desperation a lot. And that desperation comes at self-preservation or preservation of his sister. I don't think he actively goes out and tries to hurt people. I think although in season 3, you could say that he is acting out of not self-interest, but out of selfishness and out of his own hurt feelings, that, again, Clarke helped set in motion. Like, a lot of the damage that Bellamy feels in season 3 is because of the actions that Clarke is forced to do. So it's like their absence from one another affects one another greatly moving forward. And, you can disagree with me. You're fired from the podcast, though.
Well, that's fair. That's fair.
Okay.
That's why I'm quiet, Joe.
You're fired too, Shahin.
No, I'm actually thinking very hard to come up with something smart or intelligent or good to say. And
no, you got to be smart last week. It's my week this time.
And I can't, because I agree with everything that Jen said.
Holy shit! What time is it? What time is it? It's 4:02.
Can't come up with anything.
4:03 p.m. Central Standard Time, everybody, on August 28th, 2016.
Eastern.
A banner day.
Put this in your fucking Trapper Keeper. Yeah.
I'm going to get a Trapper Keeper and take it to work.
Just for this, right?
And just going to floss that shit.
You're just going to write like hearts. You're going to write like Bellarke hearts, except like with like in big parentheses, platonic. Just platonic Bellarke hearts.
Platonic Bellarke hearts. Sorry, guys, who ship them romantically. I just don't see it. I'm going to write Brophy. Like all over the place, and that's Bellamy, Rowan, and Murphy. I will romantic that shit. I will platonic that shit. I will do I don't care. And then I'll write myself and Clarke, platonic and romantic, because I'm confused about myself. And then I'll just also write.
We're getting a weird journey into your sexual appetites today, Jen.
Exactly. And then I'll write product marketing notes. Product launch in a week and a half. I should probably write
if that's what you're calling it. Seems like a euphemism to me.
All right. So that's my thing. Again, I apologize if I've spoiled. I've tried to remain as vague as possible with that quote, and it just happened this week. So apologies for folks who might catch on to what it is if they're watching the show it came from prior to this. Shahin, let's get into some of your themes that you dig. Pick your favorite one.
All right. Let me first clarify when I said I agree with everything that you said.
Oh my God, he has to clarify. He can't leave everything.
Footnotes.
You are a dick, Shahin. You can't. Oh my God.
I'm not gonna backtrack or anything. I'm just gonna say a lot of the stuff that you said could be debated. Like Joe was making good points too, and I wanted to make points about
she made good points.
I wanted to say, for example, that a lot of what you're attributing to characters might just be situational. Like we've seen this with different characters happening when one character gets carried away and they want to torture someone or murder them, and the other one tries to pull them back. And then the same thing happens, except it's the other way around, right? Like Clarke tries to calm Bellamy, or Bellamy tries to calm Clarke when they seem to be going too far, or talk them out of it. But you might say that, there's an overall, I agree that Bellamy sometimes acts out of what seems to be revenge, and Clarke, I haven't really seen that behavior from her, so that might be what Joe is trying to get at. So there might be obviously they have different characters, but there's a lot of situational sort of talking each other out of it involved. Now, their general philosophies affect the general direction of this, and that's, I think, what you're trying to say. Lexa is an influence in a certain direction that Bellamy might have been, if it were Bellamy, might have been a different direction, right?
Exactly. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. So it's, but there might be situations where Lexa talks Clarke out of doing something, so I don't remember one off the top of my head.
Yeah,
would've been-
Lexa in season
would've
2 would have been talking Clarke out of like petting kittens because Lexa's pretty hardcore.
No, I mean, like she talked. I mean, she like called Clarke a fucking hypocrite about Carl Emerson Mount Weather's security detail. Like she didn't talk her, but that's the thing. I think that is kind of the difference in terms of how Lexa and Clarke's relationship evolves. Is that sort of Lexa definitely takes on like a mentorship role of like, let me ask you questions and have you find the right answer.
Yeah, in
I
season
have to say
3,
she needs
she
to
does.
stop lecturing though. That
What did
shit
you
is
say,
annoying. Lexa kind of needs to stop lecturing. That shit is annoying.
Well, yeah, Lexa is the topper a lot of times when it comes to verbally. We all know who's the top in the physical relationship.
Oh, I mean, it's an established fact that Lexa is a bottom. We all know this. We can move on. What is so funny?
I wanted to say something like pithy and funny, but I couldn't think of anything. So we'll just move on from there, I suppose.
All right.
So yeah, Shahin, let's talk about
yes.
one of your favorite key themes.
It's actually related to what you're talking about. It's the theme of leadership, and more specifically, this problem of dirty hands that seems to be sort of the major theme of season 2. I mean, if you could say roughly the theme of season 1 was war and conflict. I mean, the first half was kind of about survival, and then there is war and conflict. And then season 2, you kind of have dirty hands as the major theme, and then I'll explain what that is. And then
Figuratively and literally.
Like, are we talking about Dr. Abby? Like,
yes, literally
Dr.
and
Abby.
figuratively.
Dirty ass hands. Here, let me give you staph infection real quick.
And then season 3 was, mostly focused on the issue of means and ends and how, a benign final goal can be achieved through questionable means. So the problem of dirty hands is when you basically have two choices, or whatever, a number of choices, and they're all morally wrong. There's no morally right choice to make. That's probably oversimplification, but that's as far as I'm going to say. And this sometimes comes up in real life of an individual as a citizen, but especially if you're the leader of a group, if you're dealing with bulk, if you're dealing with if you're a manager of a firm, or these kinds of positions where you have to make decisions that affect a large number of people, you're constantly presented with these choices, choices that seem bad on both sides. And so I was going to ask you guys, before I go more into this, I was going to ask you to, Joe and Jen, when you watch the show, do you feel like this is symbolic for something that we actually currently experience, on a daily basis on our leadership level? This is sort of a metaphor for it? Or do you feel like this is just a fictional thing that really has nothing to do with our world?
No, I think like the decisions that folks on the 100 have to deal with are the decisions that leaders across time have had to deal with. Like they've always had to make tough decisions and make unpopular decisions. That's why Abraham Lincoln basically said, you can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time. I hope I got that quote right, because I just pulled that shit right out of my ass. But you can't, you're always going to make a decision out of some point of view, in service to some agenda. And it might be an agenda that serves a great deal of people, or it could be a personal agenda. I mean, like the range is huge here. But I think this show deals with those leadership predicaments that our leaders today deal with. And I think in season 3, I don't know if it was intentional that Pike was an us or them, let's kill them all type of leader. I don't know if it was intentional to mirror back at us what is going on currently today in American politics. Bravo if it was intentional, because it is what's going on right now, if you sit and really think deeply about it, is fucking horrifying. You have a lot of people saying, "Oh, we've got really two bad people to choose from." Not really. Like, I'm not happy with who I have to vote for, but I would rather vote for who I have to vote for because I am not a racist. I don't believe in building walls. I don't believe in xenophobia. I don't believe in the alt-right. So I guess everybody's kind of knowing which way I have to vote. But like, leaders will speak to certain factions within certain people. And I think, like, I don't know if Clarke ever thinks about that. I think Lexa thinks about it because she has to, like, in order to not be killed by her own people. But I don't know if Clarke ever thinks about that, or if she's just thinking about what is the best thing to do to get Sky Crew alive from today into tomorrow.
So I think one of the good things I think one of the good things about this show is that we can actually, it allows us to understand this kind of situation on a more personal level. And, it also kind of, it's a very strong statement of perspectivalism that really, if you look at a lot of this stuff is depends on from whose perspective you're looking at it. Mm-hmm. And, that should hopefully allow us to understand each other better, or people who defend different types of policies, who can try to understand each other better. I think that if you talk to a lot of those people who you're so frustrated with, you will see that they have
frustrated is a kind word. Shahin.
You see that a lot of them have their own perspective, and they have some things to say that you can disagree with, obviously. But I think that the most important thing is to try to understand how other people think from their own perspective, and not assume that it's coming from a place of hatred necessarily. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that there aren't those people. Obviously, there are some people who are not interested in a sort of shared project of organizing a society. They really do hate a certain group of people, and they just want to get rid of them. But I think that the majority of people are actually on any part of the political spectrum. The majority of people are actually interested in the betterment of the society as a whole. And they actually share a lot of the same values with each other. But they, they kind of, instead of talking to each other, they sort of group themselves into groups of basically isolated groups that don't talk to each other. And that allows them to demonize each other. And I think that one thing that this show does very, very well is that you can see people demonizing each other, but you can also see how things are from where they're coming from, where they stand.
So I think you have a really good point. And from when you're talking about perspectivalism, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Mm-hmm. This podcast has afforded me the opportunity and kind of challenged me to view the narrative from the perspective of people other than my favorite character, who is obviously Clarke. If you've listened to this podcast, you know I have a predisposition towards Clarke's narrative and her point of view. So it's challenged me to look at it from Lex's point of view, from Bellamy's point of view, from the Mountain Men's point of view, from a lot of different perspectives. And I think to your earlier point, Shahin, where you believe that people just want to work together for the betterment of society, I think that is awfully optimistic. And as we say in the South, bless your heart, Shahin. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I think
Guess
you
what?
are being...
I lived in the South for about 4 years, 3.5
Oh, that doesn't count.
3.5
That
years.
doesn't count. Put in a decade or two.
I got to know some of the nicest people that I've ever known. And you would probably classify a lot of those people as in being in the same group that you're condemning here. But that's not the experience that I had with them.
So here's the deal with that, though, Shahin. I've lived in the South now for 22 years in Texas. And it's strange. Okay. So I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, moved down to Houston in 1994. People in the South are so nice. Like in Chicago, you would never say hi to somebody on the street or call somebody hon or sweetie at a drive-through. But that happens on the reg here in the South because people are just nicer to strangers for whatever reason. But there are a lot of deep-seated beliefs regarding race and class, and gender and sexual orientation that, you know, on the surface it might not exist, but once you get to know people, the nicest people in the world will harbor racist thoughts, and that doesn't necessarily make them bad to their core. It just means that they grew up in an environment that harbored that type of attitude.
It also depends on what you mean by racist, though. I mean, they might have certain views that for you would immediately sort of red flag a hatred, a deep-seated hatred. But really, if you talk to them more, so to your point about people smiling at you on the street, I just want to say that my experience goes much deeper than that. I went to their homes. I talked to them. I asked them about all these things. And I came to realize not every red flag is, there are a lot of false positives. In other words, not every red flag is a sign of hatred.
I agree with you. So personal
there's
story.
Actually, there's a fun set of videos on YouTube. I guess you can find them on YouTube. And originally this was aired on, I don't know, some TV channel. They're called, I think they were called "What Would You Do?" Hold on, I forgot what they're called. I think they're called "What Would You Do?" And it's basically a hidden camera kind of thing. And one of the experiments that they had was is they go to various they go to restaurants and other places and do social experiments. So you can compare like people's reactions in the South and in other places, and they sometimes find very interesting patterns that relates to the conversation that we're having. Like they set up a situation where two actors are being racist towards each other, or sexist.
Yeah, they do this. I think they do this on like ABC or something like that. Like, yeah,
might be.
Yeah,
and then they record people's reactions. And so one of the things, for example, they found, they went to this really conservative town in Texas, and they had a situation where the waitress was being an asshole to a gay couple or a lesbian couple, and they recorded people's reactions, and they said that 50% of people in that Texan town stood up for the gay couple. Whereas when they did the same experiment in New York, it was 10% of people. Now, obviously, I mean, I know what you're going to say. It's, and people in New York always think, it's none of my business. There's just a different urban environment, all of that. But the point being that if 50% of people are willing to stand up, I'm sure that not all of those people, I mean, if you were to do a poll and ask them, are you in favor of homosexual marriage, for example, they might be against it. but
Yeah.
but they're willing to stand up
They're willing
and
to stand
defend.
up for people they see in front of them, right?
Hmm.
So, personal story. I have extended family I'm not in any way related to. And I was visiting with them once, and I think it was it was New Year's Eve, and they pop off fireworks on New Year's Eve, and they call in front of me and in front of somebody of mixed race. They called jumping jacks. If you're familiar with jumping jacks, you light them on fire, and they're green and red, and they spin around. They whistle and whatnot on the ground. They called them N-word chasers. Okay.
Uh-huh.
In front of me, in front of a mixed race person who is black, and it was just ingrained. It was casual, the way it was said. It's just how folks grew up.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that people can still use that word. White folks can still use that word with one another and feel that it's okay. So, I know Joe thinks we're going down a rabbit hole right now, but I think it's very, very topical to what's going on right now in the United States. Because we have never tackled racism the way we are tackling it now with this election. When you have somebody who is publicly racist, who has publicly racist supporters, and won't denounce those racist supporters. If I even think a racist thought, I get so embarrassed and shamed of myself. I'm getting emotional right now, and I don't want to because it's fucking embarrassing. But I grew up in an America where it was fucking shameful to hate people because of their color or their sexual orientation or whatever. And it's now it's oh, we give a microphone to these people and we encourage them, and we have this false equivalency of they get 5 minutes of time and our person who is progressive and liberal gets 5 minutes of time, and each view is equally valid. Fuck that shit, right? This has gone down a rabbit hole, hasn't it? I'm sorry, Joe. I apologize. But I think it's an important discussion because, especially with Mount Weather, they obviously view, they put the Grounders in a very separate class of people than Sky Crew. They call Grounders savages, and I think the audience kind of, I don't know if the audience is ever, I think we're encouraged them to view them differently. And I think through Lexa and Indra and Octavia and Kane, we're encouraged them to view them differently. But it's that weird classism is never really addressed very well.
Can we come back to this? Because I wanted to say something about this. But
Sure.
I want to talk about Dirty Hands now.
Okay, let's talk. It's 20 minutes into this discussion about dirty hands. So
I know.
let's get into it.
We didn't really talk about it. So, one aspect of this, trying to appreciate different perspectives, is different perspectives of different people. But there's also this aspect of appreciating the perspectives of people, appreciating the perspective of their leaders, right? And in terms of people appreciating each other's perspective, I think that because this story emphasizes perspective so much, I believe the story when Octavia criticizes Clarke, for example, for her decisions, or Lincoln criticizes Lexa. I believe the story is presenting a genuine viewpoint. We're not supposed to think, oh, they don't know, they don't understand, or they're mad. This was the good decision. I think the story wants us to really consider this. That there are two different perspectives on this, and the story doesn't have to take a side, and even you don't have to take a side. I think part of the pleasure of watching this is that it provides this sort of disinterested space for you to kind of enjoy the fact that there are these different perspectives and appreciate them. And there's
That's weird. Like, I never. No, I mean, like, I never, like, when Octavia's, like, berating Clarke, I never saw it from that perspective, that perhaps she has a valid perspective.
I think
I just
you're
think it's
definitely
like,
supposed to.
how,
And
That's
I mean,
interesting.
she does, in my opinion. But anyway, the other part that I want to touch on is the problem of dirty hands, which relates to the issue of understanding the decisions that our leaders make. And that's why I asked you guys if you think that this is related to our real life. And I think Joe never gave us her answer.
My
Joe's
wisdom and
Joe's
perspective.
like, you guys, rabbit hole, eject.
So just answer this question, and then I'm going to do my spiel on dirty hands. So,
Oh my god, we still haven't gotten to the fucking spiel on dirty hands.
No, we
Oh my
haven't
God.
even touched on it.
So wait, what was your question?
The question is, when you watch The 100, do you feel like these dilemmas and these really difficult decisions that the leaders have to make is just as, you know, a nice fictional story, or do you feel like this is exactly the kind of thing that our leaders in fact deal with?
I mean, I guess if just restricting this to national U.S. politics, I think it was much more clear cut in season 3. I think for somewhat obvious reasons, but I think in this case for season 2, it kind of felt a bit more NIMBY, if that makes sense. A little not in my backyard. A little I'm okay with this, but not if it involves me, or, you know, I think that's kind of what we saw in terms of sort of the population of Mount Weather once we kind of found out that there was sort of a resistance of people, and they kept track of people who had refused the blood transfusions over so many years. I think that was
an interesting little detail that that was revealed.
So I think showing that as far as the people go, that there might be that there was like a somewhat decent contingency of people who not only disagreed with the leadership choices of Dante and Cage, but that there's probably more people who disagree with what's happening, but aren't at the level of disagreement where they will flat out like refuse this treatment that could save their lives, if that makes sense. Like different degrees of disagreeing with the status quo. And I think that that's kind of the more interesting sort of decision, because this actually gets back to what you were saying about your about that TV show of, are these people willing to stand up in this very immediate sense of wrongdoing that they see, but are they willing to stand up on a national level or in a way that sort of makes it public to everyone else that their views are this thing? And so whether or not it's easier or harder to be able to sort of come outside of your own culture and group of people that you identify with, whether or not you have sort of the bravery to sacrifice either your life in the case of, you know, some of the people of Mount Weather if they don't take the treatments, or whether or not they're willing to, you know, sacrifice others' lives. You know, I think that's kind of where I kind of saw the parallels happening.
And that's very interesting, because I think that's exactly related to this issue that I'm talking about. I wonder if those people, those revolutionaries who are against using outsider blood or using the bone marrow of these kids, if they were in leadership positions, if they were in Dante's place, would they have done any differently? And this is something that I often wonder. I mean, and this is exactly parallel to our world, where, you know, we criticize our presidents or whatever, our people who are in charge. Not that they're not stupid assholes, but we criticize them for a lot of decisions that they make. That I wonder if we were in their place, if we wouldn't have done the same. And or if we would have done any better. I mean, that's the problem, is that the decision that they have to make is a dirty hands scenario, is where you have to decide to either use drone bombs on some place that might be where there might be innocent people, or you have to give up the war, right? And or you have to make a decision: do you reduce your international trade tariffs open to trade? That way, some of your people might be poorer as a result, but you'll be saving so many lives in East Asia. And so you basically, you have no other choice. You either do it or you don't, and either way, some people will be hurt. And so you basically have to make this decision, and the people will always criticize you. And this is what happens to Clarke, right? The people will always say that Clarke did the wrong thing because the situation that she was in was one where there was no good choice.
So Shahin, there's this thing called Monday morning quarterbacking, where basically a quarterback is like the leader of the football team, and Monday morning is the day after the Sunday game. So it's very easy for folks to question decisions that were made in the heat of the game, or the heat of the battle, as it were, in the 100. So you can sit back and you have all the information, and you can go and retroactively say, well, I would have made this decision, or this was a poor decision on your part, sir, when it comes to those type of things. And it's really easy to be a Monday morning quarterback, right? Because you've got all the information in front of you. You're not actually the quarterback. You're just some schlub sitting on your lazy boy recliner, eating your spray cheese, in my case.
How gauche.
I know. How that is very gauche of me. And you're able to criticize folks from your perspective because you have no responsibility. You don't have the weight of the world on your shoulders. So you can be like, oh, yeah, Tony Romo shouldn't have made that pass that resulted in a pick six and cost them the game. That was so stupid. Yeah. Well, you're not actually in the line of fire. You don't have to make these split-second decisions that affect the outcome of something important. Yeah. So, Shahin, you're very right in your take here, and we've gone balls deep on the subject, and we need to move on.
Okay, can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
What's interesting?
You're a fucking infomercial, Shahin. But wait, one more thing.
I need to wrap this up. I haven't really landed the point yet.
Stick the landing, Shahin.
What's interesting is that the way that it's presented to us, you see Abby Abby tells Clarke to do something for her, and she says, please not forget that we're the good guys. And she promises her that she will do that. And then at the end in the finale, both Abby and Clarke admit that basically Clarke failed to achieve that. And that they aren't good guys anymore. And then that's when Abby says, maybe there are no good guys, the classic line. And this is important because it shows that maybe there are no good guys. This is not just our hero's expression of, humility and self-doubt. This is Clarke and Abby acknowledging that they failed to be the good guys, that basically they failed to maintain the moral superiority that they had to their enemy, that they basically had to become the same as their enemy. And this is a very important realization that goes back to what I was talking about last time about we are the same. And I think I said that that's the first step to peace. And the reason, I think I didn't really explain why. The reason is that if peace is ultimately a state where us, our people, when you say my people, that includes everyone. That includes all humanity on earth. Then in order to reach there, first you need to realize that we are the same. There is no moral superiority here. No one has the moral high ground.
Yeah, but there's identity politics though involved, Shahin. Is that it's very challenging for people to think above themselves and the people they identify with.
Yes.
That's why you have the white pride folks. That's why you have people who stick in insular cultures, because they understand one another. They grew up in like environments, and they have the same sort of beliefs and mores and things like that, where if you think globally, it's so challenging to think beyond yourself, beyond your family, beyond your cultural group, beyond your national identity, beyond your ethnic identity. It's so hard. And that's why I think the 100 resonates so much, is because if you throw away ethnicity and gender and sexual identity, with the 100, it comes down to these insular groups of people that kind of evolve in isolation of one another. Like Mount Weather never mixes with anybody. The Arkers never mix with anybody. The Grounders, they have clans. And they have a very tenuous
they kill
relationship.
Each other.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
The clans hate each other.
Yeah, exactly, Joe. Like, Tree Crew does not like Asgetta, and vice versa. Like,
here's the thing: I think Asgetta doesn't like anyone. I think that's a point.
Asgetta don't give a fuck. They're like Janice from accounting, if you get that reference. And he's
So
don't give a fuck.
is it any different if we divide ourselves along liberal and conservative, Democrat and Republican? Because that sounds like the same to me.
Well, it's it's so hard because
I think that it's less about survival in that case. Like, I'm not going to die if I vote Democrat or Republican.
Yeah,
I think that more comes down to like team dynamics. It feels a lot more like this is my team versus your team. Not that it's an issue of survival, no matter how much sort of bombastic.
Well, I don't think that social
agenda?
identity is necessarily a matter of survival. I mean, not anymore anyway.
God,
But it still
but if we're
exists.
talking about-
It still
but if
is
we're talking
going
about, like-
on full steam. Okay, so going back to the point that you made about how the mountain men view sky people differently from grounders, and they kind of think that sky people are more human. And this is something that I've been meaning to talk about since we started talking about season 2, and I think you have too, Jen. And So I mean, I for the longest time I didn't know the episode Human Trials. I didn't know why it was called Human Trials until I noticed that on this rewatch that Dr. Singh says it in a dialogue. She says the first human trial was a success, and she's referring to Jasper. So that means that up until now, she doesn't think that she's been doing experiments on humans. She thinks
Shahin, I didn't realize that. That fucking blows my mind. That fucking
it's
blows my
amazing.
mind. They
my
don't
mind
believe
too.
that grounders are humans.
Yes. So it's just this. It blew my mind
is that
too.
better? Is that better or worse? Like, does that make them better that they were willing to do these horrible experiments on quote unquote people, but didn't think that they were people, or is it like, or would it have been better if they had thought that they were people? Like, doesn't that make them worse people if they recognize the grounders as people? Like, and we're still willing to do this? Like, is it better in some sort of weird moral way?
Why are you asking these questions, Joe? I can't process these. These are too deep.
It certainly shifts the moral burden from having a wrong moral, having done something wrong, to having a wrong belief, it seems, right? But whether that's, if you were to quantify it, whether that's more wrong or not, or less wrong, it's a hard question. But
God damn,
it seems to
Fucking
shift.
philosophy majors, I swear to God. Such a cop-out answer.
All right, here's the deal, guys. We have gone down the rabbit hole. We have fucked the rabbit, and at this point, we're smoking a cigarette.
Oh, God, Jesus, Jen.
I mean,
So,
like, I seriously never, ever considered this, though, Shahin, that I mean, Jesus fucking Christ.
yeah,
They don't think grounders are humans.
it's pretty amazing.
But isn't it better that they don't? Because otherwise they're like even worse people. I mean, it's fucked
like
up that they don't think that they're
colonialism
people,
all
but-
over again. It's like slavery. I mean, it's just Jesus.
And
This is
then
a
what's
show on the
interesting
this
is
is
that
a show
it's
on the
not just-
CW, folks. That makes us think these things.
What's interesting is that it's not just Dr. Singh. If you think about it, a lot of the people who are supposedly on the morally good side or morally sensitive, they adhere to this distinction. I mean, Donde seems to, because he thinks that even though he feels really bad about what they've done so far to the Grounders, he thinks that this is a next step now. This is much worse. This will take it to the next level. So he's not willing to go there. And if you think about it, Maya, in a way, is the same because she wasn't protesting. She wasn't happy about it and she opposed it, but she wasn't protesting bleeding Grounders to death until they
not the way her
started
dad
bleeding
was.
the delinquents.
No, but that goes back to your point on the TV show where she hadn't been placed into a situation where she could actually identify with with quote unquote Grounders, like, or outsiders as they like to call them. Because like it wasn't until she met Jasper and the rest of the delinquents who are teenagers wearing their clothes, excited to eat cake, like all of these things that she identifies with, and they're not. I mean, you could argue that they are a violent people, but they present themselves as quote unquote civilized. So I think that it took a bit of her. She was able to identify with them.
Right. She had a real human connection with them. So in any case, but what we would say that she's mistaken, right? We would say that she should treat all humans equally. So this partialism that she has is wrong. And but you're saying that it's not drawn necessarily along the lines of Sky people versus Grounders. It's more like these are people that I hung out with versus not.
Well, though, it's identity politics, though, right? It's like people who look like me, who act like me, who think like me a little bit. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're going to form a community with those folks. I mean, it's the same thing that's going on in America. White people, people of color. I mean, people form insular communities.
Yeah.
And it's only when you step outside those communities and try, again, Shahin, to your point, to look at somebody else's perspective, or to put it very simply, to walk in another person's shoes, that you start thinking beyond the self, start thinking beyond the community that most resembles the self. You start to identify with the other and see that their concerns, the things that they love, the things that they care about, the things that concern them are not so different from you. So you're very
right. I absolutely
about,
agree, Jen. And I think that I would add that both sides, both in our real society in terms of political spectrum and in the story, I think both sides can benefit from what you just said. And just go hang out with people. That's what I'm trying to say. Just go hang out with them.
Just find somebody who doesn't look like you
and go hang out with them.
Them.
Exactly.
Yeah, hang out with them.
If you're afraid of, LGBT people, just go hang out with them. If you're afraid of Southerners or conservatives, go hang out with them. You will find out that they're not really that different. Anyway, to cap it off,
this podcast is just going to be your fucking dirty hands monologue. Like that's all that's happening this podcast. Dirty hands. Eventually,
and thunderstorm.
Like
I apologize.
I told everybody this was going to be a disaster of a podcast, and it's either our best podcast or it's our worst podcast. At this point, I can't determine which, and I blame Joe. Joe off air was like, Jen, you should drink. And when I drink, I'm like, fuck it, I don't care. Let's just go. I'm not going to adhere to an agenda or a run sheet. We'll just go. And
So what I feel like happens, what I feel like happens when you drink is one of us experiences like the full brunt of your anger and saltiness. And last time it was Shahin, and today it's my turn. And so we take turns.
Fuck you, Joe. This is me imposing my heteronormative ways on you. Blah blah blah. But really, guys, we do have to move on.
All right, my cap was gonna be that Cage.
Oh my god.
Cage is. Seriously, guys, it's one sentence. Cage is the one person who is actually the impartialist here. He is the one who's saying, "Look, we've been bleeding people to death for generations. I'm just gonna kill 44 people, and that's it. I'm gonna stop killing people after this." If you just think of it in terms of counting human bodies that are gonna suffer,
But
I'm just gonna do 44.
He's not gonna stop killing. He's gonna kill all of Sky Crew to get their bone marrow.
Well, and then it's gonna stop. No other human beings are gonna die.
Tomorrow I'm gonna stop drinking.
Wait, question. Wait, I've got a question.
Mhm.
So, let's say that, like, do we know whether or not this bone marrow fix, like, I don't think it's a genetic thing. Like, are they going to be able to
It's
pass it
supposed
on?
to
Or
be
is this
permanent.
like, right,
Is
but
that
is
what
it
you're asking?
permanent to them passing it on to their children?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I think this may have been discussed on Reddit, and I don't think it was permanent. I don't think it was a genetic fix.
Right, so it's kind of fucking
It's not
stupid.
genetic therapy. Gene
Yeah,
therapy.
it's like,
It's not fucking stupid. So Joe, consider it from the perspective of folks who only live to be a bridge generation. Like, I'm going to be the bridge generation until the next generation that can survive XYZ. It's
right,
the same
but they're
thing
going
as
to go
the
out to
ark.
the surface.
It's like
but
the
they-
worst existence available, right?
Well,
but they're
they
gonna,
can,
like-
they can get their own bone marrow and give it to their kids.
Oh my god.
All right, so guys, we have to move on because
Joe, you
we have-
totally ruined my awesome punchline with this obscure point that
No, please.
was-
dissect this fucking joke of a frog. Come on.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, let's move on.
No, I need the punchline. Don't tease with punchline.
Oh, that was it. The
Shahin.
punchline was Cage is the impartialist. If you really
How-
think about it, the one person who's the impartialist here is
You
Cage.
said this already. But
We-
you said
we-
this already. That's not a punchline. That's
Yeah,
not
and
being
then
all
Joe
funny.
ruined it because she was like, "What about their children?" And it's like, all right, because my whole point
Joe.
hinged
Yeah, no, it all
on
comes down
Cage.
to me today.
My whole point hinged on
Ruined
Cage
everything.
stopping to kill people, and she's like, "Well, he's not going to stop killing people because he needs bone marrow for the kids." And I'm like, "All right, well, that." But putting that
This is like
aside,
the Twilight Zone of our podcast. Like, I feel like we're like, you know how last podcast we said, if you stare into the abyss stares back? We are now the abyss that is staring back at ourselves.
So we're in the upside down, is what you're telling me?
We are in the upside down. Spoiler alert for those of you who are not watching Stranger Things. And if you're not watching Stranger Things, what is wrong with you? Hey guys, this is Jen. This wraps up part 1 of our 2-part season 2 conclusion podcast. I would blame myself for not having better control over the timing of this podcast, but I really blame Joe, who, of course, at 3 o'clock on a Sunday encouraged me to drink scotch, which just spiraled so out of control that we went long and went down some rabbit holes and made us do about 3 to 4 hours of recording of this podcast. So thanks, guys, for sticking with us, and look for part 2 of our season 2 wrap-up in a couple days. Thank you so much, and may we geek again.